Hey, this is our parenting and family corner, and it's time for us to look at a family matter or a parenting issue, and we'll bring the both into this one because I think they are related. Today we're going to be speaking about interfaith marriages, where partners come from different religious backgrounds, or maybe you start off with the same faith and one person down the line decides to say, you know what, I'm choosing a different path. How do you navigate that? There are complex dynamics, especially when you come from different spiritual beliefs. There are family expectations of how you raise your children, celebrating holidays, what to actually wear, what to eat in the household. We explore the joys and the challenges, the compromises that also need to be made in this African context. Well, joining us, we've got Desola Sosan, who's a parenting expert, who's joining us from the UK. We also have Mkhulu Nobamba Zulu, a founder of Nobamba Family, Spiritual and Mental Wellness Institute. Desola, thank you for joining us. Mkhulu Zulu, thank you for joining us as well. Let me start with you, Desola, in terms of how do we characterize interfaith relationships or marriages?
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think this is a really important conversation. The world is becoming a global village, and lines are getting blurred every now and again, especially when it comes to marriage. For me, I think it's important to highlight the fact that a marriage is the coming together of two different people, different in terms of personality, different in terms of ideology, and in this case, different in terms of faith. What would be easy to navigate is if everybody was exactly alike. But there are no two people who are alike. We're all a product of our upbringing and all the influences that have brought us this far. And when interfaith marriage is occurring, it's important to establish the non-negotiables, right? It's important to be clear on what individual beliefs are. Now, every religion has its own perspective and dynamic, but usually you would find that there are points of alignment across all faiths. And if that conversation is had early on in the relationship, before marriage even, it's easier to clarify where those alignments are and where there might be potential for conflict in future. So that's the approach that is recommended when a situation like this presents itself.
A fantastic way to start. Let me come to you, Mkhulu Zulu. What's your take in terms of how you would describe an interfaith relationship?
Okay, look, my take is, first we need to define why are two people in a relationship. When people are in a relationship that leads into a marriage, it's because they want to build a family, they want to create a family, which in the spiritual context, African spiritual context, is that you are expanding your family tree, right? So a woman, according to African culture and African spirituality, is married into the man's family. The family that is being expanded is the bloodline of the man, right? And when two people get into a relationship, of course they need to talk about who they are so they get to know each other. So two people don't just get into a relationship and decide to get married without knowing who is this stranger that I'm getting married to. It starts there, because if you think you're going to start negotiating when you are married, already you are negotiating on top of conflict. So it is very important that when two people meet, whether you meet at the church or you meet in the streets or wherever you meet, if you are starting a relationship, the starting point is, who are you? Who is this person that I am starting a relationship with? Because then that relationship will then lead into what we call a marriage. And in the African spirituality context, marriage is not just between the two people. Marriage is also ancestral. It's bringing the two different families coming from different backgrounds together. And that is why there would then be rituals.
But can you practice different faiths even in that context that you're giving us from an African viewpoint?
Look, faith is a choice. That's where we need to start. So spirituality is not a choice. Spirituality is connected to your bloodline, right? And faith, you choosing a religion which comes secondary. It's a choice. That is why people choose different churches, right? So that is why I'm saying it is important when you meet a partner, a potential a marriage, you then need to, those are the first things that you need to negotiate. You need to first come to terms with the fact that you are two different people from two different backgrounds, and how are you going to navigate that? That you need to understand each other from that point first. So two people from two different backgrounds or two different faiths, maybe if you want to call it faith, they can get married and they can even have children as long as they are able to sit down and have conversations. Because what is important here, everything in a marriage is negotiated.
Okay. That negotiation is something, sorry to stop you there. That negotiation is something I want us to expand on. Let me come back to you, Desola, because both you and Mkhulu Zulu have completely different interpretations of this idea of interfaith marriage, right? But that negotiation that you both have highlighted, very nuanced and different from each other, is something that can actually be something that's difficult to do, because when you love someone, you, especially at the beginning of a relationship, you accept them more than you negotiating with them, and maybe over time you learn different things about that particular person. And I'm sure that as a relationship starts, you're not negotiating everything. You're probably negotiating the essentials, but I doubt you negotiating spirituality or you negotiating faith values. I'm sure that's the last thing you're thinking about.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to mention that this is where systems come into play. When all those feelings and those emotions are working out, and like you said, you're not thinking long term. You're not thinking what will happen 10 years, 20 years down the line, because you're feeling all happy and, you have those hormones running through your body. You're thinking, oh, everything will figure itself out and it will be fine. But the truth is, conflict does arise. And it's what you do in those moments where you're still happy together. It's those systems and structures that you put in place that will then support you when situations arise. So for us, we recommend family systems, putting systems and structures in place. And like I said initially, it begins with a recognition of what those alignment points are in terms of beliefs, right? We're zoning in on faith here. So you need to recognize where that person is coming from. What are those things that are fundamental to them? Things that they're not likely to shift about. So if you've referenced Christians and Muslims, for instance, some denominations, even though they are the same, have variations in them. So somebody might be, they might both be Christians, but see the practice of that religion from two different perspectives. So it's important to identify what another person, what they can shift away from, what compromises can be made, and what is absolutely fundamental to them, such that the idea of contemplating change in that will be difficult for them. So going back to the idea of systems, when those when that idea, when the beliefs are situated and perhaps they found points of alignment, then you need to go ahead to create family systems. And the top one, the one at the highest level that is absolutely critical, is the governance system. And this is where you outline what your family vision is. Where is it that you're headed as a family? What is it that you're hoping to achieve? What impact is your family going to make on the world around it? Then you want to look at your family values. You want to identify those elements that you are going to characterize your family, those things that you're going to then inject into the children as you parents live them out. Then you want to go further and create a family constitution. Once this happens, what do we do? What are the expectations of behavior? when you work out all of those, you put them together, you can create a family creed where you read out every day. We recommend putting it in every room.
Sure.
And when I say we, I mean family systems engineering practitioners. Put it in every room. So everyone is conscious and they're aware of what is expected of them. Now, when you do all of this, then the family becomes self-sustaining, that even when there are issues with faith, we go back to that initial document. This is where we're going. How does our behavior and the choices we're trying to make now, how does it align or deviate from that?
Thank you so much for that. That was such a comprehensive response. And there's so many elements that you highlighted there that I think we need to also dig in deeper, because you're a parenting expert. So I'd like to look at the parenting elements, because if you are practicing different faiths, do the children practice both? What happens there? And then we're going to come to you, Mkhulu Zulu. I want to get your thoughts there on the value system, because I know values are also part of African spirituality and how we run our families there. Let's take a break. We'll be back.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Benjamin Mushatama and Palisatawo on the move.
We're having a conversation about navigating interfaith marriages or relationships where partners come from different religious backgrounds or are becoming more common in African countries. How do we navigate those? We're still having this conversation with Desola Sosan, a parenting expert in the UK, and Mkhulu Nobamba Zulu, the founder of Nobamba Family Spiritual and Mental Wellness Institute. Let's speak about that children aspect, Desola, because it brings in a whole new dynamic into this relationship, whether these two who are coming together already have children or whether they want children within their marriage. It's a big conversation to have if you are an interfaith relationship, to which, first of all, which faith do the children practice and what are different nuances that we need to navigate and look at in this particular scenario?
Amazing. So I think it's important for us to note that faith is meant for the sustenance of the human or the human species, people. Religion is created by people to put certain ideologies in place and create structure around beliefs, right? At the end of the day, it's the wholeness of the individual that is priority, okay? And that's why it's very I would say, just to be a little bit controversial, we cannot say one religion is superior to the other. And I think when it's approached from this perspective, then it's not a case of the children must practice a certain religion. It is, what do we believe as a family? And like I said earlier, when that agreement has been created, recognizing that two individuals are coming together to create something absolutely new that has never existed before, a family can choose to chart their own course. What they then describe it as is up to them. So if the man and the woman have said, all right, we are practicing different faiths, but we have fundamentals that are aligned, some people would look at the origins of different religions and look at the fact that love is a unifying factor. So if love becomes a family value, then what the children are experiencing in the home is love. How that then is expressed in terms of religion and in terms of faith becomes a decision that is the children are allowed to decide on when they're grown. Now, there will be discussions around family holidays. What do we do when this happens? What do we do when we're celebrating a certain time of the year? You know, every religion has sacred times and events, you know. So the family can incorporate both. At the end of the day, the child is going to toe the path that they're going to toe. And there is honestly no absolute guarantee that the religion the child is introduced to is what they're going to follow through life. So it's recognizing that the child would eventually find their path. The job of the parents is to show them that path. And if they live their lives in a way that their ideals become appealing enough to the children, then the children then have two options to follow. At the end of the day, it's those values that are critical, the quality of the individual that is delivered to society. That is what the focus of the parent should be, not necessarily insisting and saying, look, you must do this, you must do that. If a child grows up in a certain culture, with a certain series of ideologies, they will grow up and live that. If the parent, I would say, if the parent is able to help a child accept their own point of view as theirs, then they would have been successful. If they're trying to do it with manipulation and with force, that is when they will run into a brick wall. That's when they will run into difficulty and challenges. But if they live those values out and they create those systems and those structures that give the children an opportunity to experience both religions, then when they come into their own and they're growing up and they have that maturity, then they can choose the path that they would want to follow.
All right. You are of the school of thought, Mkhulu Nobamba, that, African spirituality is not a choice, and it's happening within us and it's happening with us, and, it's all encompassing within who we are. So in the place where, there's one person who does believe in African spirituality and practices, or maybe even has a calling and practices in depth their African spirituality, is with a partner of a different faith who doesn't believe in African spirituality. Do you think children can thrive under those circumstances, or are there actually circumstances where one has to say these two people cannot be together?
Okay. Look, yes, African spirituality is not a choice. So we're just calling it African spirituality, but it's spirituality. It's not a choice. It's not an ideology that you choose. You want to believe in this, you don't want to practice this or not. It's not like religion. We are born with it. It's from within our bloodline. It's from within our families, right? So when two people get married, especially in Africa, because in Africa we've got a cultural and spiritual heritages that we are accustomed to. When two people get married, unless if you are talking about an African and a European, that's a very different one, but if it's two people from Africa, from South Africa getting married, from the same background, they just differ with the beliefs, because that's what is dividing people nowadays. You get married to a person, whether you met in the church, you get married to a person who later or comes from a family that is inclined to African spirituality, and both of you maybe would have chosen the church, and later on African spirituality kicks in, because you don't invite it, it just happens to you. And those two people who are in a relationship need to sit down and say, now this has happened, what do we do? Because remember, it's not a matter of I believe in this, I don't believe in this. This person who is experiencing the challenges with African spirituality is struggling. It's not something that you can decide, no, I'm not doing this thing, or no, we must negotiate how we're going to do it. The two people must be able to sit down and say, I'm watching my partner struggling with this thing, and I need to support my partner. But that is the reason why you are in a relationship. Support my partner goes through this thing, so that our family does well. Our children are also learning from us. My colleague there spoke about the family values. Values are everywhere; they cut across. Whether you are a Christian, whether you practice in African culture, values are the base of building any family.
Okay.
How you negotiate the ways that you are going to build your family and the ways that you're going to raise your children is very important. You don't negotiate spirituality, but you negotiate how you are going to navigate through spirituality. Whether one partner is going to church and the other one is not going to church, the children should not be made to choose. They should be explained to. This is the culture of the family, and this is what is happening to either your mother or your father, but the other partner still chooses to go to church. We should not be choosing whether we want to be part of this or not part of this. We chose one thing, the relationship. That's where it starts. Once you choose the relationship, it comes with its own baggage.
Yeah. All right, we'll have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I appreciate that, because you're right. Every relationship does come with its own set of challenges and its own baggage. And if you are going to decide to be in an interfaith relationship, you have to make an intentional and added effort to work through those challenges. Thank you so much to both you, Desola Sosan, parenting expert and founder of Mkhulu Nobamba Family, Spiritual and Mental Wellness Institute, Mkhulu Nobamba Zulu. Thank you for your time. It's 11:32 Central Africa time. We're a little bit late. Sorry, Fikile Ngwati. May you please give us our latest sports update?